Now, before, like, without wasting any time, we can start off with the presentation. So, as we all know, the topic for today's discussion is consolidation and codification of labor laws. Now, this topic has been in the limelight for the past couple of weeks for multiple reasons. That might be like it might be a step towards the future, it might be certain opposition that the code has been getting. So, basically, there has been a lot of discussion that has gone around the code. But before we start off with the discussion, what is important that we understand what was the idea or what was the whole concept or the background which led to this development. Now, many countries across the globe, and India is one of them, which has been struggling with this problem of archaic labor laws. And now it is not just archaic labor laws, but there's also multiplicity of labor legislations, which leads to serious inconsistencies. Because when you have such a wide range of labor legislations in place, there is a 99% chance that there's going to be a lot of confusion and chaos around it. For instance, in India, we have over 100 state legislations and about 44 central legislations. Now, these legislations cover a wide array of aspects like you have industrial disputes, you have payment of wages, social security, working conditions, safety, and so on and so forth. Now, this recommendation is not something that has come up in the recent times, but the recommendation goes back to 2002, in which the second National Commission on Labor had found that the existing structure that we have for labor legislations in India is a bit obsolete, and there are a couple of inconsistent definitions since there are state legislations and there are central legislations, and again the central legislations are also like over 44 of them. So the whole aim was to ensure that there's a ease of compliance and you ensure that there's a uniformity in the labor statutes that there are in the country. So the NCL back then had recommended about 5 categories of group. One was industrial relations, second was wages, third was social security, fourth was safety, and fifth was welfare and working conditions. Now, before we deal with these codes in detail, let us try to understand the shift in approach that has occurred. Now, as we can see, and as we have stressed till now, that the labor legislations in India are obsolete and there is a need to actually reform them and bring about the change in accreditation, because it is a known fact that as your society changes, your laws need to change. Otherwise, there will be a loss of sync between how the society and the needs of the society and the legislations that you have in place. So the present legislation, that is the 4 codes, was incorporated with a view of consolidating over 29 labor laws. Now, as we have discussed, that the first most important thing was to reform the old and primitive labor statutes. The second was expansion of scope and inclusion of all the employees and all the sectors. Now, what has been happening is that under these various legislations, you have different categories of applicability and different thresholds. And what has happened is that in most of the legislations, the unorganized sector has not actually got the kind of weightage or the kind of importance that it deserves, owing to the simple fact that India has about more than 90% of workers who have been and like are engaged in the unorganized sector. So obviously there's a need to have some legislations in place which safeguard the rights of these employees and which also regulate the functioning of the entire industry. Thirdly, we need to have an efficiency and ensure that there's an ease in compliance. Now, even from the employer perspective, having so many labor laws in place creates an utter chaos. Because you have so many labor laws, you need to understand that under every labor laws, there are a ton of compliances which need to be dealt with. So if you have so many labor laws, it leads to a chaos and sometimes it might lead to involuntary non-compliance. Lastly, it was also done with a view to ensure effective implementation. Now, if you have a centralized code with centralized systems in place, the entire implementation of these legislations also becomes effective. So the whole aim and object of getting these codes into place was not to favor certain sector group, but it was to favor, or it was for the development of all the interested parties in the whole deal. Now, without wasting much time, let us go on to the main topic, that's the main 4 codes. So now there are 4 codes. One was Code on Wages, which consolidates and replaces about 4 statutes which are related to regulation of wages and payments. Then we have Industrial Relations Code, which consolidates 3 statutes, and these statutes are related to industrial establishment and settlement of your industrial disputes. Thirdly, we have Code on Social Security, which consolidates and replaces 9 statutes which are related to your social security benefits like your EPF, ESIC, gratuity, and so on and so forth. Lastly, we have Code on Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions, which would replace 13 statutes that deal with health, safety, and the general working conditions that are there of all these employees. Now, this is a brief timeline. I would not waste much time on this, but just to understand the trajectory that these legislations have gone through. Like I said, the recommendation had come way back in 2002. Then there was an introduction of Bill on Code on Wages in 2017, which after multiple changes was passed by the Parliament in 2019 and has now become a code. Then there was introduction of the 2019 bills. That's the other 3 codes that was done in 2019. However, these 3 codes were later on referred to the standing committee. And then on the recommendation of the standing committee, the original 2019 bills were withdrawn and the new 2020 bills were introduced in the parliament as on September 19th, and as on September 23rd, 2020, these have been passed by the Rajya Sabha. Now, going on to the first code that is there, that's the Code on Wages 2019, which has already received the presidential assent and has become a codified act. Now, like I said, the object of Code on Wages was to regulate the wage and bonus payments in all the employments, irrespective of where any trade, business, or manufacturing activity has been carried out. Now, the 4 major legislation that this code encompasses is Payment of Wages Act, Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Bonus Act, and Equal Remuneration. So as you can see, this code has been brought into picture basically to govern all the wages and all the payments that might be done to the workers or the employees. The key feature herein is that this is applicable to employees from both the organized as well as unorganized sector, irrespective of their wage ceiling or the threshold or the kind of employment that is there. So the whole aim of this legislation was to create an inclusive legislation or an inclusive code which would provide this protection of, like, let's say minimum wages or floor wages to all the employees. And again, this has been a major step for the regulation of your unorganized sector, because for example, under earlier Minimum Wages Act, the regulations are applicable only to the employments which is specified in the schedule to the act. But now this code has created an umbrella which would expand the benefits that are there under this code to a wide array of employees, which would obviously be beneficial. Now let's just understand a few key definitions before we deal with into the key features and the main pointers of this code. So first, the definition of the term wage has been amended. Now what would the term wage include is basically it would include your salary, allowances, and any other component which would basically be expressed in monetary terms. And the 3 basic terms included therein are your basic pay, dearness allowance, and retaining allowance. But the definition also gives in a certain set which are not to be included in the definition of wages. For instance, it would include your PF, it would include your gratuity, your traveling allowance, your house rent allowance, and so on and so forth. So there's like a list of things that have been specified under the definition. The main highlight here is that it states that at least 50% of your total remuneration needs to constitute a part of your wage. So irrespective of the amount that the employee is paying, 50% of the total package that is given would be considered or would need to constitute under the concept of, like, under the definition of wage. Now, the second most important concept or definition that has been introduced via this code is the floor wage. Now, minimum wage has always been a matter of concern or discussion in India. Now, the concept of floor wage in simple term is basically that the central government will determine a wage taking into account like various things, like you will say there's a standard of living, there is different geographical groups and the other factors that might be involved, and determine a floor wage. Now, the minimum wage that would be determined by the appropriate governments would have to be higher than the floor wage. So this promises or guarantees a minimum wage to workers across the countries, thereby giving you basically a unified protection or unified structure of payment to them employees or workers across the country. Now, like I said, one of the most key implications or factor of this code has been the minimum wage. So now let us try and understand what is the implication of this code on the concept of minimum wages. So like I said before, the code basically expands the applicability of minimum wages to all kind of organizations, like you may be organized, you may be unorganized. So basically it covers the entire umbrella of organizations. Secondly, the key important feature is that the state-wise minimum wage that would be determined has to be higher than the floor wage. So the appropriate governments do not have the authority to determine the wage which might be lesser than the floor wage. So in the event that the existing minimum wage, let's say, is higher, are fixed by the appropriate governments are higher than the floor wage, that does not give the governments a right to reduce your minimum wage. So the minimum wage would always have to be higher, but if you already have a higher minimum wage, that does not give you the authority to actually minimize your minimum wage and get it to the floor wage level. Now, the minimum rate of wage shall be reviewed and revised at the interval of not exceeding 5 years. This was the same provision that was there in the earlier act, so there has been no change in the review period as such. And now there are various factors for calculation and fixation of your minimum wages, like it's considered about the geographical area that you come in, the classification of workforce, that's the kind of work that you would be undertaking, various factors such as your criteria of consumption that has been given, and so on and so forth. Now, it is important to understand that when you deal with these factors that are there for calculation and fixation of wages, this is an extremely dynamic structure. So the factors that you would be consider would have to be in consonance with the dynamic structure, because the whole concept is to provide a bare minimum wage to all the employees and guarantee them a basic standard of living. So this concept, I feel, needs a bit more attention in this respect. Now, few of the other key important features herein are that there are various time limits that have been prescribed for payment of wages for various categories of employees. So for instance, if you're employing a worker on a daily basis, then you have to give him, or you have to pay him the wages at the end of the day. If on a weekly basis, then at the end of the week. Then if, on a monthly basis, then at the expiry of the 7th day of the month, and so on and so forth. Now, for instance, the most important thing here is that even if an employee, let's say, resigns, or an employee is removed from his employment, then all his wages have to be cleared within a time limit of 2 days that is there. So as you can see, there's like a lot of protection layers that have been given to the employees, and all this is being done just with one aim in mind, that is to ensure that there is a bare minimum basic standard of living that is guaranteed to every worker and every employee in the country. Now, there has also been an increase in wages for the overtime, so which has been increased to twice the rate of your normal wages. Now, this was done basically on the recommendation of the ILO, which had recommended 1.25 times. We have done it actually twice times, so we are guaranteeing them a bit more protection. Now, the most important and actually a very nice feature that has been introduced by this code is that there are various disqualifications for bonuses which are given. So now it would include fraud, embezzlement, and so on and so forth. Now, conviction for sexual harassment has actually been included as a criteria under specified disqualification for bonus. So it is actually a great step and initiative to see that the idea or the concept that sexual harassment needs to be dealt with in a stringent manner is slowly but surely getting a place of recognition in our codes and labor codes as well, because like I said, there is a POSH Act in place, but the expansion of the applicability sphere needs to be increased, which I feel is slowly but surely coming our way. Now, these are the few of the other important features, like there is a prohibition on gender discrimination related to wages and recruitment for the same or similar work and in conditions of employment, if you have similar experience, like similar amount of work experience, then you need to be paid the same amount of wages, and there can be no discrimination. Now the highlight here is that under the earlier code, the term men and women were used, and now here they are using the term gender. So now the term gender encompasses again a wide array of gender, because as we know, it is not just limited to man and women anymore. So this has again expanded the protection to a wide array of people. Then we have Constitution of Central and State Advisory Board. So again, like the name suggests, it's basically for giving advice to the central and the state governments on various topics that have been enlisted under the code. There is also a provision that is there for appointment of your labor inspector and facilitator, basically for dealing with the compliance part of it in an effective manner, helping out even the employer with regard to, as to what compliances need to be done, keeping a check on whether all the factors or all the compliances under the act have actually been met with, and so on and so forth. Now, as we have discussed, now there are a couple of changes again in the offenses section as well. Like there are two major offenses that are there. First is if you pay less than the stipulated wages, and second is a blanket statement that is for contravening any provision of the code that will be there on wages. Now, compounding of offenses has been permitted. However, there would be a restriction in case of if there is a second, or basically in case of a repeat offense. Now, the key highlight here is that the limitation period has actually been enhanced to 3 years. So this would earlier range from somewhere between 6 months to 2 years across different codes.